We have reached the conclusion of the regular season in college football. Hope you've enjoyed our conversations with Steve Merrill from Wager Talk throughout the college football season. Steve will, of course, join us for the conference championship games on into the postseason of college football for his takes on the biggest games in college football. And don't forget, Steve's Under the Radar selection is exclusive on Patreon. Search Mark Rogers TV. And he is just a mere 11-1 against the spread. All right, Steve, Clemson and South Carolina, the Gamecocks with that enormous breakout game as a 22-point dog against Tennessee in which they scored 63. And they, one of those oddities that you'll bring up from time to time, they actually won the game by more points than they were an underdog by. So just a breakout game by Spencer Rattler and company. Clemson still a 14.5-point favorite where they haven't lost a game at home since 2016.
Yeah, it's a tricky handicap, right? Because you can make two arguments here. You can make the argument that South Carolina's at a huge letdown spot, or you can make the argument that that was a breakout game, like you said. And keep in mind, it wasn't a fluke that they put up over 60 points. Rattler had a huge game, basically doubled his production for the whole season in one game as far as touchdowns, some other metrics. And this is the guy, keep in mind, last year when the season began at Oklahoma, he was the preseason favorite a year and a half ago to be the Heisman Trophy winner. So there's always been tremendous upside there. And I don't think you necessarily have a letdown here against rival Clemson. And then on top of that, they don't have to win the game, right? They just have to lose by a little less than 2.5 touchdowns. So it's a tricky situation here. We'll look at the math. My math does favor Clemson by 18 points in this game. Once again, I'm a little reluctant to rely on that too heavily because if that is a breakout game by South Carolina, then you have to adjust those numbers a little more aggressively. I do think the values with Clemson from a line value perspective, but once again, South Carolina can lose by 2 touchdowns and still cover basically, which makes this tricky. What I do think is maybe worth the play is the over for that reason. If it was a breakout game like it appears to have been for South Carolina, team put up 63 points last week. The over could be worth a look. The concern, though, is they only put up 6 points against Florida, only 10 points against Missouri. The only other game was 38 against a bad Vanderbilt team. So hard to know exactly what to make of this game. I think the over is probably the safest play as South Carolina's offense should show up. The defense is still a little suspect.
Join Steve for the rest of the betting breakdowns for college football on all the channels here at the Voice of College Football. But for the deep dive on the NFL and the NBA, in addition to college football, wagertalk.com. And I guess on Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV, get Steve's Under the Radar selection each week, exclusive to us at the Voice of College Football. 11-1 against the spread this season. Steve, we appreciate you stopping by.
Thanks, Mark.